Welcome, everybody. What we're going to do tonight, ostensibly we've got a title that's something like Digital Creation, New Technologies in Contemporary Art. You've just finished walking through a bunch of exhibits of contemporary art where arguably there's not a whole lot of technology going on. So that could be something to talk about. But one of the things we want to do is we'll start off, we'll spend a little while sort of like introducing our panelists, get them to talk a bit about themselves, their relationship to technology in the production of their art, see if we can find the common threads between them, and then simply open it up for the group here. There's no reason to stand on formality. We certainly welcome discussion. And the discussion can range as widely as you feel like it should go, from the works that you've seen outside to the works that we're going to discuss here, and anything in between. So I guess I'll introduce myself very quickly. My name is Bart Simon. I am not an artist, and I am the director right now of the Molior Institute for Arts, Culture, and Technology at Concordia University, and also a former director and co-founder of a research group called Technoculture, Art and Games. So I kind of crisscross a lot of things, but I'm a sociologist, so my job is just to watch out for all this stuff. And it's kind of makes me perfect as a moderator, I think, for this kind of thing. But let me introduce my panelists. So on my far right, well, there's the missing chair for Aurélie, but beside Aurélie, where Aurélie would be, I have Raphaël Lacoste, who comes to us from Ubisoft and is senior art director there, illustrator, trained as an illustrator, animator, has been involved in new media and art in various ways since the mid-90s. And found his way, he can talk about this more, ultimately into the game industry, but he's also been working on films and other things as well. I know his work actually personally from Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which is my favorite of the Assassin's Creed games, and we could talk about mood and the art direction in that game. And so that's Raphaël, and next to him, Skawennati, kind of colleague of mine at Concordia, but an artist who has been working in technology and media in the production of her art really since the mid-90s and earlier, has been playing and messing and experimenting with stuff for a very long time in an art practice which is both looks at history and looks at the future at the same time. I remember very early on when I first met you, and it was Cyber Powwow with the AbTeC project, and it's kind of like we might talk about it as like the first indigenous social media platform in a sense. And from there, she's worked on all sorts of other things, including a major project in machinima, and we can talk about machinima and art. Which is both future and nostalgic at the same time, and working in games, working in all sorts of different media, mixing technology and mixed media. So lots of experience here from a kind of art practice point of view, and then a more commercial video game point of view to open up this discussion. So we'll get going. I think we should start by filling in the blanks that I missed in my bio, as you could talk a little bit about your work. Who wants to go first?
You get to go
first.
Okay, so it's funny to have this all this path, because I started in art and media, in the fine arts in France, in Bordeaux, and I was not really happy there. I wanted to work on something maybe more poetic, more figurative, so it's why I've moved away from the art and media and started to take a lot of photos, and I worked for a theater company in Bordeaux. So I was mainly working with the guys on stage and working with the lighting, with the setup of the lighting. So it's not really technological, but more like traditional. And after that, I moved to Angoulême, and I was really lucky to have René Laloux as a teacher for 3D CG animation, where I know Softimage and all these tools from Montreal. This guy was the director of the Fantastic Planet, Gandhara, and Time Masters. It's movies from the 80s. I did 3D animation there, and I did my first leap of faith joining the video game industry in France and then Montreal back in 2002 on Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. And now I'm still practicing. I still have my personal practice. I still have personal, illustration work and world buildings. I did 2 art books, but at the same time working as art director on the Assassin's Creed franchise, which is like keeping me very busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sego Guego. I've been working, like you said, since 1996. So I'll tell you, I went to Concordia University in design art, in the Bachelor of Fine Arts. And when I first started school, they would give us a supply list. And on that list were rapidograph pens, French curves, gum erasers, like all the old school tools of that trade. But by the end of it, we had a course called The Computer as a Design Tool, which sounds really cute now because it's like the only tool now, And but that's where I was introduced to computers. I mean, I actually did do some kind of programming class in high school, but this was where I saw that you could use computers for creating imagery and fine art, and I just fell head over heels in love with what was possible. And haven't stopped doing that. I've been showing. Basically, I've been making work like doing my little thing. CyberPow is a very big project that I did which was basically an online, a chat space. I mean, I guess chat spaces are kind of all online now, anyway. But it was also a gallery, an online gallery and a library. I invited other artists to make work about being indigenous, about using technology, about the intersection of those things, about native, non-native relationships. And so those were the themes that we took up over almost 10 years, maybe 7 years, something like that. And was really interested in the networked aspect of working online as well. So we were, talking to one another over these, this large geographical space and finding commonalities amongst us despite the different places we were from. And then sort of after that project was over, I was introduced to another online space that's a little more popular called Second Life, which was, so where this first space was a 2D space, this is a 3D space. And I felt I sort of really understood that space. It was very similar to the first space. Both spaces were very customizable, so it's very possible to start building worlds and imagining other places, imagining other ways of being. And that was, I thought, very important as an Indigenous artist to be able to do. Also, another thing is that as an Indigenous person and a sci-fi lover, I was noticing for a long time that there wasn't any science fiction. No, that's the wrong thing. There was a lot of science fiction. There are no brown people in the science fiction. There are no Indians in science fiction in the future. And I was like, that's a major problem. We need to start having imagery of ourselves in the future so that we can have a signpost to go to, or to not go to, but at least say, I don't want that in my future. I want this. So that was part of what I was trying to do as an artist. Anyway, I should also say a couple more things about myself, which is that I co-founded Aboriginal Territories in Cyberspace, which is a research network, with the gentleman in the row over here, Jason Edward Lewis. And another large project a big project we did during that time is called Skins, which is a video game, it's a workshop to teach youth how to make video games and machinima based on our stories, on traditional or on stories from our communities. And a little later, we started the Initiative for Indigenous Futures, mainly for the reasons that I just told you. We need to make sure I wasn't the only one. I couldn't be the only one making images of an Indigenous future. I needed help. So we've been inviting other artists and other thinkers to come here or to do, doesn't, they don't have to come here to do it, but to think about the future, to picture it if they can, to write about it if they can. That's the nutshell version.
That's excellent. All right, so bio's out of the way. You have a bit of trajectory, and maybe you've even encountered the work of Skawennati and Raphaël in different ways. I'll start slow, build up to where I think you two will meet, and then we'll speculate from there. This is my plan. First question, because I walked through the exhibit today and I had to wonder to myself, why are we doing this panel here? And so I think the easy question to start with, and I think Skawennati was starting to speak to it, is never mind technology and art, but let's move it straight to computational media. What does this do for you as an artist? How does it distinguish your capacity as an artist, or what you imagine yourself in terms of your art production? So we have to pull back in the case of the Ubisoft case, pull back to what it was, that art identity or the artist identity that you're fostering even within the commercial environment. What does a focus or a use, I don't know if it's a tool or a medium or whatever, computational media allow you to do that you couldn't do otherwise with any other medium?
That's a good question.
I know.
I would say, for sure. Thanks for asking.
It's a very confident moderator. I like that.
Technology, all these tools we have are just tools. So if you bring to life something that is not interesting in terms of concept and the world you want to create is not interesting, the tool is not going to help you to bring something interesting to the players or even to the watchers. So for sure we have new ways to bring impressive and very immersive worlds to life. We did that recently with Origins. We brought to life the whole country of Egypt with like the main cities, the most historical place, and we have many landmarks. So what is a bit fascinating here is that the light would react in a very realistic way, so we can push stylization more in the composition, in the treatment we have on environment design, for instance, but we can really have this feeling of like very credible sense of atmosphere, of light, and density of maybe the vegetation. We can have this very dense and very large forests using the procedural tools we have. We use Houdini, different kind of new technology that could really help us to save time in production, but also to bring to life huge locations. So that's for sure a way to maximize production and to bring something really impressive to the people for immersion. But you need always to have interesting ideas and interesting design, and that's where we can really be traditional, like the base. The conception stage for us is very traditional. We draw on paper, we sketch a lot. We have the Bible, we do with the guys are usually all painted in 2D, so you need to have an interesting art direction before.
So can I just push a little bit on that? Because inside of that whole production process, inside the studio, can I go to your own art practice, or the source of your,
sure.
And what the medium is doing for you in terms of what you can realize, especially because you do art books and other things as well. So what's the medium?
Yeah. So I don't have. So when I don't have this large team to bring to life a huge environment and to have an interactive environment, I would do mainly illustrations. And what I love about 3D, for instance, is that I can really iterate with different cameras, different point of views. I can set up the perspective and have like different point of views on the same environment. And I try to, when I'm doing a matte painting or an illustration, to give the sense of a world building in one single image. So it's more like giving all the sense of scale, atmosphere, maybe some ingredients of storytelling inside one single image. So for sure, having the tools of like a 3D rendering, for sure, like being able to iterate on the lighting, the light direction, and on the perspective and the camera is super interesting for me.
So, and I think that's kind of interesting, because it's a sort of all the possibilities that one experiences, or sort of the audience experiences in anything that you produce. You know, there's all the iteration that goes into that, and how that might be different than working in other media. I think might be getting towards something.
Yeah, right.
How about you, Skawennati?
For myself, I think there was a couple of things. I mean, when I was first making art on a computer, like just basic imagery, it was the fact that it was very exciting because you could animate things, so you could bring things to life, like you were saying, in a way that you just can't do with a still image. But what really became interesting was the network aspect of working in computers. Like, so when the modem showed up, and you could start to work with other people over that modem. I really loved it. And I'm actually not a great collaborator. I don't really want to. It wasn't like about making things together, but it kind of also was. But just the idea that we could bridge these distances was a huge factor for me. And then more, later on, I mean, I still think that's kind of great. I mean, I'm working in a shared world, so what you're seeing on the screen is some of my work, and so that's a world that I built with a team. And we're sitting in the same room, all of us on different computers, all of us in that world building. Well, I mostly get to walk around and say, a little to the left. But, we're all able to work together in that way and kind of share objects and place them, shape them, build them, and place them. The other thing that interests me is the conceptual aspect of it. So I'm really now getting more and more interested in the avatar. So self-representation in cyberspace. As an Indigenous person, I think it's actually important to represent in cyberspace, but all of us have these questions to ask ourselves and to think about. I mean, what is our relationship to our avatar? Why do we make an avatar who is taller or, thinner or uglier or, whatever they might be? They might have 9-foot hair. Like, why can't we, what are the reasons why we don't act like our avatar? What are the things that are holding us back as people in society? I think these are really interesting questions that we can talk about, and that the best way to talk about them is through the medium that you're using.
All right, let's move to this next piece and go from there. As someone who has encountered both your work in these different dimensions, and I sort of have mentioned this before, what occurred to me is the common thread that I think would be interesting, and if I could get you alone, you could probably have a really good conversation about it with one another, is both of you are very interested in your sort of art practice around what I would call world building. I don't even necessarily know what world building means, but I feel like it's, I don't know if it qualifies as art in any contemporary art sense. And yet it's a term we use, this idea of making places, in this case, in this medium, that we can occupy and experience. Both of you do this, and you do this in very interesting ways. So I wonder if you could talk about that, because often, I mean, in the case of Assassin's Creed, we forget a lot of that in whether we focus on game mechanics and the kind of things that we can do, or we focus on the story, but we don't necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about the worlds that we're occupying in these spaces. Why I like, for instance, I love Black Flag, because I don't tend to play, I just sail around, right? And a lot of people do who ended up playing that game. But I think it's also true of both your Second Life worlds, and it would be interesting to hear a little bit about the world aspect, not so much even the avatar aspect, but what it does, what the production of the world is doing for the kind of meaning that's being produced for the people that are there. Want to try that?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because, usually, what the broad audience would see on AC is, they recreate places. It's not the job I'm making at all. We're creating stuff. But people will hear, they recreated exactly the city as it is at this time, or they recreate exactly this culture. But it's not the case. We just take that as inspiration. But the real goal for us when we bring to life a place, a world, is to bring emotions. And that's really the stuff I'm focusing on. But usually we don't see that. We don't talk about that when we play the games. But it's like the invisible art we have in the film industry, whether you work on matte paintings. When it's really well done, you don't see it. When you start to see really like the backgrounds and the CG, they have visual effects in the background. But when you don't see it, it's the invisible art. So we kind of do this kind of approach when we create the world. And it's very interesting because we have to think, like in music, you need to have these quiet moments, these moments of maybe loud sounds, density, and abstraction. So you need to play with all these different adjectives. And when you create a place, a whole world, you need to bring all this kind of diversity and contrast and rhythm in the world to make sure that we don't get bored, we don't get used to that place, and we want to spend a long time. Ubisoft would love us, to have worlds where people could play 200 hours without getting bored, And the games are pretty expensive, so you want to feel like a big range of emotions and spend time to discover a lot of interesting things. So it's not only about storytelling and gameplay. The job I'm making is really about bringing emotion and creating this visual variety and being attached to the different locations.
For myself, the world building is it's definitely part of has to be conceptually there. So, for example, in the piece you're seeing but not hearing, I built a world that was my utopia, basically. So part of the idea was that I wanted to imagine a place that was environmentally, ecologically sustainable. I want to imagine a place that was post-race and that was peaceful. And so those are some of the things that I was doing in that world. And so and of course, the place is the origin place of, it's supposed to be all humanity, but it's the Haudenosaunee origin story, or, not the origin of Haudenosaunee, it's the creation story, but Iroquois people are the ones who are telling it. So I wanted there to be things in there that would be recognizable as Iroquois. So one thing that's recognized, that a lot of people know, I think, about Iroquois is like the beadwork, and we have these half circles that are called sky domes, and so the sky dome is like, it's really supposed to be this whole, this half bubble in some other dimension, but I actually made the people in my world live in these sky domes, in like domes. Because I imagine that when Sky Woman falls to Earth and she's, raising her child and she's like decorating she's making her clothes and she's decorating the clothes, she decorates like home. And so that's why we have this beadwork. That was like the whole thing I was imagining, to go with the world I built. I thought it was interesting what you said, like, I don't know if world building fits into contemporary art. So I think that's a really interesting question. I, of course, would say yes. But, I sort of wonder why you think it wouldn't be.
Oh, gee. No, I mean, because I don't think we have a category, right? There's not a world-building category, but it's kind of what I would call it. And it's not as if observing a landscape painting isn't, the landscape painting is a form of world building, certainly legitimately so, but we don't call it that. And so, the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because this is a term we actually start to use, and I think we start to use it in part because of computational media. I think that notion of world building, I mean, it's interesting. We as a sociologist, we study also world building in children's imagination and play and things like that. So we have that term world building there, but I'm not sure if artists actively use it or not. Maybe in cinema more. I don't know. Yeah. The piece then that's missing. So we can talk about the world building aspects, but the other piece that's missing that doesn't necessarily apply to all art and technology is interactivity. Because you both build worlds that people inhabit. And there is a line we can draw. Okay, we can make worlds that you can inhabit, and you can make worlds that you cannot. And what is that? Is do we just cross an art line there, or not? So games suffer from falling off the art wagon towards the inhabited worlds wagon, and everybody's there to play, but not necessarily appreciate the experience as art. That's perfectly debatable, but culturally, that's a problem. And on the other hand, here you are creating things that look very much and feel very much like games, but they're art. So there's very little that separates you two, except for a line which says, you make art, but maybe you don't. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, like what is like really depressing is to see videos of people playing games and just, looking the ground when they play, just, watching the feet and running, like, just watching the ground and never like observing the skies and observing the composition of the landscapes. But like mainly when we see the gamers like going really quick from mission to missions, they would just watch their feet, which is like very like not really like paying back on the work we did for the world creation.
What does it mean to you that your worlds are inhabited? Does that make a difference to you?
I feel that we have all these different kind of people playing these games, so it is very interesting to see all these different experiences you can inhabit there. We created for the last game, Ace Origins, we created a photo mode, so people could just spend time free roaming in the world and taking photos. And we had a huge amount of photos taken there. It's almost like 60 million photos. So people will really enjoy spending time just out of the path of the missions of the narrative, and just exploring freely and taking pictures, waiting for the sunrise on the mountain, going in the swamp to see the fog rise in the evening. So it's really interesting to see that you can really experiment different. There's different ways to experiment the game, not only following the path of the gameplay and the missions and the narrative. You can also just spend time there and make art just by taking photos in the open world that is created for you.
So I don't think that, so until very recently, I would not have said that you could inhabit my art. Yeah. So that's one thing that I always felt you didn't quite get about me, Bart. Okay? No one can, you can't go in there. It's a story. I filmed those avatars as though they were actors on a movie set. It wasn't for you to go and hang out there. Except that I just did that. I just put all my sets onto my island in Second Life, and now you're all able to come and visit anytime. You won't run into that guy, but you can lie in that bed if you want to, and you can be there. You can interact with others. Actually, if you were to go there right now, no one else would be there, so it's actually kind of lonely and a little boring. So because of that, we started activating AbTeC Island. So once a week, same time every week, we are there. Either myself or one of the people in our lab are in-world, there to welcome you, watching for you, waiting for you to come and, and say hi. And the idea there, I do think it's still art, though. So I do think that's an art practice. It's a different, what I'm doing is providing an Aboriginally determined space for you to come and visit and just be who you are. And, so you can talk about you can talk about the artwork you've seen. You can talk about the sets you are looking at. You can talk about, one time a person came and she's like, look, I made this totem pole. Is that bad? So we have these conversations in there. And that's the part that I really feel is like art, because it's actually just like the Cyber Powwow project I did in the mid-90s. It was the whole point was to provide a space, a special space dedicated to talking about these kinds of things. That it's the same thing, actually, the intersection of indigeneity, art, and technology. But plus, you can talk about other stuff too.
I think that distinction is so absolutely instructive, right? So this notion that you built a set in Second Life, which is itself built as a world originally for people to occupy and inhabit, not even necessarily to play games, and then make a film, essentially a film, which then the art part is what we see on the screen. And somehow in the movement there, it gains its art, or it gains its artistic status. And then you...
In the movement to the
originally,
screen.
that's the first movement, right? So if, for instance, if it can't be on a wall that we can't look at, whether it's a moving image or a still, we kind of struggle, or our culture struggles with art status a little bit. So we could talk about it that way, or we could talk about it in terms of the artist's intention being evident and visible in the work, right? And so as you move from your inhabited world to the translation, or the sort of representation, literally, of a representation, it gains in art. But coming back again, right, and thinking about that as an art practice, I think is super interesting. And it's kind of mirrored in the video game world when we talk about the difference, for instance, between cutscenes, right, as a form of cinematography, which is art in its own way. You can win awards for, making cutscenes, versus this sort of open world play. Where's the art there, or where does the art reside, and what is artistic about that? It's not like it's not there. It's just harder for us to immediately see. And I think that's one of the things we were talking about in terms of not being able to appreciate the world that one is occupying.
But I think it's really interesting to be able to be surprised by the world itself. So now also because of the AI, all the development of the tools we have now, we're able to create animals with different routines, and they have like all the life. And so we had, like, for instance, we had the hippopotamus, we had the crocodiles, we had all the different like birds of prey, predators, and all this stuff. So you could just stay there and appreciate what's happening around you. And this life is like really created by yourself, which is pretty fascinating. So actually, people playing these characters and animals, it's actually the AI generating all these behaviors, and they have all these consequences. So it's pretty fascinating, because there's also the cycle of atmosphere, of light, everything's reacting, the trees are moving around you, like with the wind, like the leaves. So it's a living, breathing world, actually. So that's something I really, really like, and just spending time observing, being a tourist in the open world, instead of playing the actual quest and playing the missions, just spending time enjoying the world and see all the change in the time of day, and all the AI roaming around. It's pretty interesting.
Should we move it a different topic? Yes, and then we can open up for questions. So a sort of last discussion topic, because we've been pretty nice to technology in terms of contemporary art. We should be able to say it's 2019. Why isn't there more computational media, contemporary art outside, for instance? There's a bit, and it's interesting, and we could talk about that. But maybe we should talk about some of the negative or problematic issues that come with using technology in art. And two of them I had sort of flagged for your guys' comment. You could pick up either one. One has to do with the relationship between an artist and their tools, I suppose, or even their medium. And what does it mean that the dominant tools and media of computational art practice are kind of corporately driven? Very expensive. But never mind the expense, they arise out of because they're so expensive, because they require resources. There's certain kinds of values and needs and desires that get built into those tools, and then the artist is left to figure out what to do with them. But does it matter? And sure, there's an economy, there's a political economy to the brushes that a painter uses and the canvases. But I think there's a scale difference here. So that's worth talking about. And the other thing, which is, I think, now it occurs to me is maybe even more interesting, is the question of access and publics. So there was this period, the cyber powwow period, which you could say art was becoming, through the medium, was becoming even more accessible, connecting people in ways that may not have before. Could we say we're starting to face a reversal? So I would cite VR as a good example. So VR is exciting, and it's a great new medium, but it's hardly as accessible as sort of the original cyber powwow concept was, in terms of, and in anything it may be doing worse damage, and this is limiting access even more and more. You can't experience it. The same number of people can't experience it, let alone afford it, and all these sorts of things. And maybe we can say similar things in terms of the experience of AI-driven art and things like that. So those would be like two kind of like looming, scary negatives. I wonder if either of you want to pick up any of those.
Well, yeah, there's a lot, all that. So the first thing, I'll respond to your first part first because it's a big factor for me. I was making my first machinima, but it was like taking a really long time. Like it was an 9-part, how many parts are there? Thank you. 9-episode machinima. And I was like only at, halfway through my story, and Second Life threatened bankruptcy. So I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to finish with the same medium. And so that was a big lesson to me of like, wow, the dependency. Like, yeah, if your paintbrush company goes out of business, it's sad, but you could probably get another paintbrush that will still make your painting look similar, Whereas if I had to use another online world, like, it wouldn't have looked the same at all. And then the other thing that is related but that you haven't exactly mentioned is the constantly receding horizon. So you're talking about an artist and their tools and the mastery of those tools, right? When you're working in a company, when your platform is a company and they're continually updating and upgrading, you can never master your tools. I constantly feel like a noob, like not totally, but sort of like, how do I do this now? Oh, they change this. Like, recently I hadn't been working in Second Life for a year or something. Come back in, I didn't know how to change my own clothes as an avatar. They had changed the whole system. So I had to kind of relearn it, Actually, I haven't really relearned it. I just wear the same thing all the time now. So that's just a couple of the things. I mean, the accessibility thing, I actually think accessibility is kind of the same it's like Cyber Powwow, when we first started, people didn't have modems back then. So, and people didn't have computers. Like, they didn't own their own computers. Like, you were really either, you were rich or lucky or like super technophile to have your own computer at that time. That's why we had places set up, like we would go into artist-run centers where they had a couple of computers, like 3 computers, so we'd put food out there and people would come and some people would eat, some people would sit at the computer. I actually think it's the same now. I mean, I went to a VR show, and there was 20 headsets. That was at the Phi Center, and that was like, what? That's a lot of VR. That's a lot of goggles, But so where there's a will, there's a way, But there's other reasons for me not to use VR. It's like the lights right in your eyeballs. I mean, that's evil. I think that's scary and bad for our bodies. Like, that's the other thing about technology now is it's killing us, right? Like our wrists, our backs, I see my teenage son, he has a laptop, that he has to have a laptop for school. Laptops are evil. They're evil, right? We should be able to sit straight, so the screen has to be in front of us, and right? The keyboard's supposed to be there, and the laptop makes us do that. So, I mean, yeah, sometimes I'm like, how did I get here? How did I get to be the spokesperson for technology and contemporary art? Like, it's like, it's evil. But it's because of capitalism. So really, I'm anti-capitalism.
Always comes to that. Yeah.
But we don't have the smell of turpentine and all this stuff killing us, so it's different. Yeah. But yes, I totally agree. And what I hate is the race for new updates on the programs and new computers and new upgrades on the video card and all this stuff. So you think you know how to master the tool, and then you get an update and you lost all your shortcuts, all your stuff. So it's not like taking photos with an old camera. You know exactly how it works, and you can keep that for 20 years. It's the same, with all the materials for film and photography. It's like when you had a Leica, you could keep your Leica for 20 years. Now you have to upgrade every 2-3 years to get the new 50 megapixel and the 80 megapixels, and you won't get hired if you don't have the latest camera updates and stuff like that. So it's pretty frustrating to feel that it's not tangible anymore. It's always like updated, and you need to adapt yourself to all these updates, which is a bit like an alienation, I would say, of the tool. This is why I like to come back to paper and ink and just drawing stuff traditionally, to just feeling free, I would say, compared to the time I would spend with the tools. Actually, I hate the Photoshop updates. They changed all the palettes. Tools were like different lately, so it's an issue. It's a problem.
All right. We got time. I could keep going, but it's your turn. We've laid out a few topics, a few points of intersection, but you're allowed to go wherever you like. So this is the point where you can take questions. Mode's back there. We'll take.
Really? No question. It's like at school, like I said.
Very clear.
Oh. Thank you.
Thank you for a great conversation. I'm just thinking about the world building question, because I think that you can think of some artists where, particularly when you kind of look over the span of their practice, is that's exactly what they're doing, right? It's they're building a world with all these different manifestations and sort of kind of working out what that world is like, and also how that world changes over time. So I think there actually is a substantial amount of sort of world building in art, but part of it is that it's hard to see in a single piece, because you don't enter into the world through a single piece. You enter into the world through the sort of the scope of an artist's practice. And so I wanted to see what you guys thought of that. And then the second thing is, part of what interests me about the world building in something like Assassin's Creed, or like the work that Skawennati's doing, is that part of it's about, and for me, when I like wandering around Assassin's Creed or Red Dead Redemption or something like that, part of that is about seeing the care with which things have been made, right? So seeing the intentionality of like, okay, somebody has constructed something here for me to experience. And so I'm gonna go and experience it. It's not random. It's not just a jumble of images or pixels or something like that. There's actually something here that somebody has thought about and kind of put on the screen so I can enjoy, even though all the action of the game is maybe going on way over there. And so I'm just interested in your guys' thoughts on those two things.
Yeah.
What comes to mind when you tell that story is I was talking to a film person, and he was saying, like, he was going on about Martin Scorsese. I don't know that much about film, but he was like saying, it's so incredible, he would like find these locations, and he would, put like a certain picture on a certain wall in a certain way, and I'm just like, that's what we do all the time. Like every single shot is that. We've done that, So it was just like such a strange thing for him to be, to me, so strange for him to be talking about that like it was a big deal. And that's, when you're starting from zero, a gray plane, yeah, it's really, yep.
Yeah. And I totally relate with you when you talk about Red Dead Redemption. I spent 120 hours just exploring the world. I did also the missions, but I had this moment where I saw this mountain in the distance. I just wanted to go on the top of the mountain. That was just my journey. And then I discovered a skeleton of a giant was hidden like under a rock. And it was like a great surprise. It's not like something that is like a recreation of what you would see in the real world. Like you don't need to live the same thing you live in real life. I don't need to go to the rush rooms and to do stuff I'm doing in my real life. I want to live something different, be someone else, be maybe a gangster, or be a cowboy, or be an assassin in the past. So that's also something that's really important. Not about like recreation, like literal recreation of what we live now, but something that would really bring something new and moving, and like living your imagination, for instance. That's a good experience.
Thank you. There's a new... Oh.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I just had a question about world building. I work at Ubisoft as well as, but one thing that fascinates me is that if you give the people the tools to create worlds as well, is like there's a game Minecraft that everybody knows about, but it's just the base, right? But it gives you the freedom to do whatever you want. And there's communities of thousands of people that build worlds in their own way, in their own corner, and they all share it at the same time. You can interact with their worlds and what they created. Some people create fascinating little things. What's your opinion on that, and how does that qualify as art? And in what shape or form?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, I really think it's the intentionality that you're talking about. I mean, the same thing with YouTube. There's all these people making videos. Why isn't it video art? You know? I don't know the answer. I just, it's so weird. It's like, well, I know it when I see it. You know? But I think that, for myself, it took a long time before I could confidently say I'm an artist. I wasn't sure, right? Like, was I good enough? Did I have enough of the intention? Like, I don't know. But I think that once you are like, okay, I am an artist. I've seen enough art. I've seen enough not art. And, I'm gonna tell you that this is art. And then you're gonna say, yes, it is art. You know what I mean? Like, part of it is just us positioning ourselves there. But there's also the chance that someone will say, no, that's not art, then it sucks, I think that, so with the Minecraft thing, Second Life's the exact same thing, right? Like, you can build your own world in Second Life.
It's actually pretty cool. It's a very good tool of creation. I kind of, when I see my son play Minecraft, I'm more happy than when he plays hours, Overwatch, for instance. I know like competition games are like a big thing, it's like being in the school, but I think there's a very interesting creative process in Minecraft. Not only because you can create compositions and buildings and stuff, but you can also make chemical reactions with different stuff. So you can also activate trains and make explosions and discover different stuff. It's a great tool to create, but saying it's art, I don't know. Maybe when you have a concept in your mind and you try to apply a map, an idea of maybe a building you want to create, it's not only this improvisation with the tools they have. I think there's also this mindset of being into a creative process. But it's clear a tool you can use for creation.
Thank you.
Come in, sorry.
Yes, I'm obviously a dinosaur in this world. That goes with the territory. However, I am very surprised that something I take for granted is obviously not, and apparently very rare. When I sit on my computer and do whatever, then I need to have music. ACDT used to be my music.
Hold the mic
Now-
up. Hold the mic up closer to your mouth.
I beg your pardon?
Can you hold the mic closer?
Oh, I'm sorry. Instead of ACDT, I listen now to ACDC, ACDT, ambient, chill out, drone, trance. And always the same four groups, more or less. That is nothing very special. However, I have a big screen, and I don't need the whole screen for my text. And the rest of the screen, I divide up. You can divide it as much as you want with a software that's called Sound Spectrum, Whitecap. And this has an astounding visual effect. It started, I think, 2004, and I've had it for 15 years now. And I'm really surprised that not everybody uses that. Something is missing if I don't have that. At the same time, I have to be able to concentrate, right? For me, it's just normal. It's like I have difficulty understanding why it's not normal for everybody.
So
And I think most people don't even know about it.
Yeah. So you have an application on your computer that translates your favorite music into a visual thing that you like?
No, the music is not changed. You can take any kind of music. And I've got to say, you have to buy the software. They send it to you for $50, maybe US dollars, I don't know. And for a year, you have the visuals available anytime. And you can change them. You can vary. There's a great amount of variation that you can do yourself, or you just let it go. So it's a good deal.
Cool.
It's called Sound Spectrum, and also goes by the name of white cap. White caps are on a wave the tops. So by either one.
We'll try it.
Hi, I'm not sure I have the exact wording for this question, but I really love your work, Skawennati, and I was wondering if you could speak a bit more about like indigenous futurism, but within the confines of an application that was built in the past. I know you're saying that it's constantly evolving, but it was created by someone, it has limitations, and how can you have this futurism that's cemented in the past? Yeah.
Well, I feel like futurism is not based in a technology, right? It's based in ideas. Like we can write indigenous futurism with a pen and paper. So it doesn't bother me at all, but I do get asked questions similar to yours a lot, because they're like, because I did choose Second Life because I felt like it was the most futuristic medium I could use at the time. And that was 2004. And it was still pretty new. It was about 4 years old, I think, when I started using it. But I still think it is. I still think it's awesome. I know people laugh at me, they snicker. You know, I just think it has so much potential. I mean, I know that it doesn't look as good as, you know, as Assassin's Creed. Like the people like have these funny faces, you know.
That's what I like about it.
Me too. You know, so yeah, it's kind of like, it reminds me of, well, now I sort of think about the Jetsons, you know, like how, like, you watch that show. I mean, I don't know, does anyone know what I mean? That cartoon, the Jetsons, and like, you know, it's super old school futurism, you know? So, yeah, I think that, like, using Second Life as both my, I say now it's my platform and my location of, you know, art making, is, I think it's just the right fit for me, and I think that I can create futuristic places very easily. I can convey the concepts I need to convey using it, and I do still think it's futuristic because, like, you know, we're flying around, you know what I mean? We're telepathically sending our thoughts to one another, which is, you know, really just chatting, really just texting, but yeah, we can build improbable architecture. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you don't feel limited by it, but like that it allows you to create more.
Yeah. There are limitations. They're just not limitations that bother me. A lot of people are really bothered by the bodies. The bodies are very sexy, right? And it's really, and I get a lot of questions about that as well. And they're not just sexy, but they're very gendered. And it's quite difficult to break out of that. That is a limitation of Second Life that's quite difficult to break, but it's not something I've really felt the need to break. Like, except for example, when I first started in 2004 and I wanted to make an indigenous person, like the darkest skin was like my color. Like it was quite fair. So that was something that was very interesting, you know. And I still think there's like room for, you know, I made like purple people, right? Like so the specific limitations they have were not limitations that were bothering me, but they do bother other people.
Thank you so much.
Do we have a last question, maybe? Otherwise, I think we may be gonna wrap it up. Perfect. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.